Stupid answer, I guess. But then he says that's actually a good answer.
Even necessarily a very stupid answer.
It's totally wrong and just, I think, uninformed.
Assuming this is the case, is this command still relevant in a modern context?
It's like he read a book titled, Traditional Gender Roles, and he's just kind of regurgitating that stuff to you.
Well, they feel safer at night knowing that a man is in their home.
In contemporary times, women are a lot safer walking down the street. That's a fact. Yes, I would personally even also feel safer knowing that another man is in my home. Ancient practices sometimes don't apply to contemporary times. Rates against women, are even in cities, are substantially lower in 2023 than they were in 1923 or 1823.
Or are men sincerely convinced that they're out here saving us left and right from bears and tsunamis?
That was a time where women were at substantial risk, and a single woman was much more at risk for being single. But now that risk has been, I'm not saying it's been eliminated, but it's been substantially reduced. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Good Problems Podcast. I'm your host, David Nima. This episode, we are going to provide counter-arguments and essentially debunk Matt Walsh's theories on gender roles. Now, in this video, he goes over a couple of TikTok videos and he pretends to provide arguments against whatever it is that's being said on TikTok. But I'm here to tell you that he is totally wrong and just, I think, uninformed when it comes to humanity. And I think he just has a very kind of narrow point of view that has been clearly kind of taught to him. And this is just what he grew up with. It just looks like he read a book titled, Traditional Gender Roles, and he's just kind of regurgitating that stuff to you.
Gender roles, and I assume, I haven't seen any of it ahead of time, but I assume that these are all mostly TikTok videos. So we're going to get insight from TikTok on the question of gender roles, and I'm sure that the insight will be quite profound and indeed insightful.
In reference to the passage that discusses wives submitting to husbands, I asked, what did women need protection from? The most common answer I got was animals, wild animals, and natural disasters. Assuming this is the case, is this command still relevant in a modern context? Or are men sincerely convinced that they're out here saving us left and right from bears and tsunamis?
Well, yeah, if you ask a bunch of stupid people a question, you'll get stupid answers.
Honestly, as stupid as stupid does.
So there's no surprise there. But what do women need protection from? I mean, first of all, that's actually not even necessarily a very stupid answer. First of all, it may be the case for you as someone living, in a comfortable environment in the modern Western world. It may be the case for you that you don't have to worry about animal attacks. That's the kind of, that's a real threat for actually billions of people who currently live on planet Earth right now. That is the kind of thing. And in fact, when we talk about, where do we get the idea that men should be protectors? Well, this is an ancient idea, and it goes back to a time when things like animal attacks were a relevant threat to most people who lived on Earth. Natural disasters.
So let's stop right there. So he's basically saying, first he says that that's a stupid question or a stupid answer, I guess. But then he says that's actually a good answer because I guess what he's claiming is that there's a lot of people that are still under threat of animal attacks, that are not in the Western world. Now, I'm not hearing too much about, wild animal attacks even happening in today's third world countries. But if there are animal attacks happening, the difference in strength between a man and a woman is not going to be enough to overcome an animal attack from a leopard or a tiger or a bear or a lion, for example. So what he's claiming here in terms of that women are vulnerable, for example, to, I guess, attacks. Now, there is a reason. He just said that that's an ancient idea. And he's absolutely right. That is an ancient idea. And I'll tell you, women have been most vulnerable to human attacks throughout history. When you look at everything before kind of, I don't know, the 1900s at least, right? If you go back to the 1500s, if you go back to the 500s, a woman is tremendously vulnerable to basically getting raped and murdered, okay? That's been a number one concern in society for women going back, 5, 10,000 years. Okay, women have been. That's why there's a commandment that says, "Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife." Right? Because before that commandment, your wife was up for grabs. And even in some societies right now, women are not allowed to leave the house without a man being present, presumably because of that very serious threat of literally just getting raped, just getting abducted and raped and kidnapped off the street. Okay, so that's been happening for thousands of years, and there's been a lot of practices and traditions that have come into place to essentially offset that and to protect women. Okay, and one of them is the presence of a man. Okay, but in 2020 in New York City, if you're a woman living in New York City today, you're safer today than you've ever been before in the last 300 years of New York's existence, right? You are far safer as a single woman walking down the street in the streets of Los Angeles and Paris and Rome and New York and London and Jerusalem today than 1,000 years ago, okay? You're far safer anywhere. I mean, today we have the criminal justice system. There's a lot of less. We have a lot of things put into place to prevent women from getting raped, basically as they're walking down the street. Okay, so you don't need these ancient traditions. They don't apply to contemporary society. I mean, again, if you're a woman right now and you live in Bangladesh and you want to go and get a cup of coffee, I'm not saying that you're totally safe, but you are far safer today than you were 500 years ago doing the same exact activity. Okay? So that is a shift in societal culture, right? That's a shift in just, as a result of modernity, right? And in contemporary times, women are a lot safer walking down the street. That's a fact. Okay. So some of these traditional reasons for why some of these traditions, like, man protecting women, have come into place, they don't necessarily apply in contemporary society. And again, don't give me the animal attack stuff, because the animal attack argument is completely bogus, because I don't care if you're a man or a woman or a UFC champion, in the female or the male league, you're not going to be able to fend off an animal attack. Okay? An animal, you got to use your wits to fend off an animal attack. You can't go pound for pound versus, against animal attack. So that's just absolutely ridiculous. Now, he's going to talk about natural disasters a little bit, and we'll talk about it. But really, again, you have to consider that as a woman, you are far safer doing anything today than you have ever been in history. And that's just because women have been, historically raped and pillaged much more than men have been, right? And that could be for a variety of reasons, but that's on a downward trend, especially in Western civilization, in Western countries. But even in some of these third world countries, the third world discussion is a whole different discussion. But when it comes to Western society, if you're living in a Western democratic society like Houston and New York City, Los Angeles, San Antonio, wherever it is, you are far safer walking down the street today than you've ever been before at any time of day, right? And some of these traditional, like, I need a man in my life to protect me, otherwise I literally can't go outside and get bread because I'll get abducted, right? That would be a risk. Like, if over 20 years of being single as a woman, eventually one day you're going to get abducted. This is 500 years ago. But today, for 20 years, you can walk to the grocery store and get a slice of bread and bring it back home and eat it, and you will not starve to death. And at the same time, you're not at risk of getting abducted. Like you said, ancient practices sometimes don't apply to contemporary times.
To most people who lived on Earth. Natural disasters. If you have a tornado bearing down on you at this exact moment, then it's unlikely that a man will be able to step in your way and like punch the tornado and make it go away. But I don't think that's what people mean when they talk about natural disasters. Here's one way that we protect ourselves from natural disasters. Let's say one way is by building homes that will be able to withstand natural disasters. And who are the people doing all the building, like almost all the building?
I'm reinforcing the header. That's great, buddy.
As soon as the zoning committee gives me their approval, I know the bank's going to release the money. Right now, I'm just asking everybody to just, power through.
Okay, if I was to look, and I don't have the information right in front of me, and so anyone is free to fact check me on this.
Get to work, people.
But if I was to look at the demographics for construction workers, am I going to find that it's 50-50 men and women? Or am I going to find that nearly every construction worker on the planet is a man? So that is actually an example of men protecting women and themselves and society.
Okay, so basically, he's definitely right in terms of the overrepresentation of men in the construction industry. But now you have to also consider that until roughly 100 years ago, women weren't even allowed to be in the construction industry. Women weren't allowed to vote or work. Okay, so we're just starting to see the results from the women liberation movement and the equality movement, where women can work, and maybe some women 50 years from now will be overrepresented in construction. And I bet you, and here's another thing, if men didn't exist 500 years ago for whatever reason, if men didn't exist, I guarantee you the women would be doing the construction. And they would take on that role. So the only reason they're not represented in the construction industry is just because of a variety of social factors, right? Primarily the fact that women have not been able to work, in any business, until just 100 years ago. And yes, maybe more men like construction more than others, but that's not why, That's not an argument for gender roles, right? And that's not an argument saying that men are protecting women by building homes, okay? Matt Walsh right now, he can't build you a home, okay? And the reason his wife is married to him is not because of his carpentry skills, okay? So, and you as well, if whether you're a man or a woman, you're probably not putting, me protecting you from natural disasters at the top of your resume for your dating profile. Right? Because it's assumed that we're all protected from natural disasters to the extent that we can be protected, based in the cities and the governments that we live in. No one's getting married or selecting their mate based on their ability to protect them from natural disasters. And in today's world, again, you don't need to get married or select a mate based on their ability to even protect you from other men and other human beings, because there's laws out there that can help serve to protect that. And there's also self-defense courses that women can take. So you don't necessarily have to have a man beside you to be protected from other men or from tornadoes. So this is just absolutely ridiculous arguments here.
But there are many other things as well that women would need protection from. Crime, violence. These are all very relevant things. Like if you live in a city, you probably don't have to worry about a lion chasing you down, but you do have to worry about criminals. That's why if you live in a high crime area, or even if you don't live in a high crime area, and you're a woman, you're probably going to feel much safer if you have a man at home with you. There's a question for you. You take any woman at all, I don't care how feminist and how empowered they think they are, will they feel safer at night knowing that a man is in their home?
So this is just another ridiculous kind of, proposition here. Even as a man myself, of course, I would feel safer at night with another man in the house, right? The more the merrier. When I have my cousins come over and they visit, I have 3-4 grown men in the home, sleeping over that night. I feel much safer than I do when I'm alone. So this is just absolutely, ridiculous, arguments. I don't know if Matt here is being purposely facetious or if he's just completely blind to, he's just trying to, back his way into a position that, men should do manly things and women should do womanly things. And these are all completely, these gender roles are just completely irrelevant in contemporary society. We're all equal people and we're all capable of doing kind of pretty much everything the same, we're pretty much capable of doing everything that everyone else is doing. But in terms of even modern day crime, as I stated earlier, you are far safer walking down the street at night or sleeping in your home today than you were 500 years ago, even as a single woman. There's things like Ring camera. There is, police. There's a lot of safety measures. Women can, carry a gun. She can have training in self-defense. You can have a dog. So there's a lot of kind of safety and defense mechanisms that are available to women and men today that have not been available, for thousands of years, where the risk of getting raped and murder has been out there for women for thousands of years. So you have to understand, again, how contemporary society necessitates kind of a new filter on some of these traditional, antiquated, gospel or whatever best practices you want to talk about them, however you want to call them, that are, just completely not relevant to today. Again, you're not getting attacked by tigers. You're not getting attacked by tornadoes. And when it comes to crime, you have tremendous, vigilante and government kind of protections in place to deter crime. And in fact, crime rates against women, are even in cities, are substantially lower in 2023 than they were in 1923 or 1823 or 1523 or 1023 or 523. I mean, that was a time where women were at substantial risk, and a single woman was much more at risk for being single. But now that risk has been, I'm not saying it's been eliminated, but it's been substantially reduced. So it's just, would you feel safer knowing that a man is in their home? Yes, I would personally even also feel safer knowing that another man is in my home. So that's not, a good argument here in terms of gender roles.
They're married. Do they feel safer when their husband is there at night, or if they're home alone? I think for nearly every single woman, they'll say, "Yeah, I feel safer when a man is there." Now flip it around. Is there any man who feels safer at night at home knowing that his wife is there? No.
Actually, yes. Even, if I'm sleeping alone at home versus if I'm sleeping at home with another person, the more the merrier. Again, this is just another person that might be alerted to a strange noise before, I wake up before I wake up. Right. So my risk is decreased by another human being sleeping in my home, especially somebody of age, for example, an adult. So this is just absolute ridiculous, antiquated. Oh, yeah, you feel safer at home with a man at home. Again, just like you have to understand contemporary times, which is, again, home break-ins, much lower, just looking at it historically versus 500 years ago, especially those that are against single women that are sleeping at night. Back then, I'm sure they were targets, but now they're not necessarily targets. They could be targets, but so are couples. Sometimes they're targets of home invasion. And, having another man in the home always makes everybody safer because there's another human being in the home. So, and first of all, and I've said this on previous podcasts, which is that if my wife was trained in military combat training, right? Let's say I was married to a female cop, right? Yes, I would feel much, much safer with her being at home, and I would probably send her to go see what's going downstairs before I would go downstairs.
I mean, I can say this as a man. I'm happy that my wife is there. I don't feel physically safer. I don't think to myself, well,
if anybody breaks in, at least my wife is here to handle it.
So I think that also tells you something about the gender roles and how they still apply.
So yeah, so basically, you have to kind of, take these kind of antiquated arguments for gender roles with a huge grain of salt, because society has changed, and our life experiences have changed. Our expectations of safety have changed. Our access to defense has changed. Okay. And the kind of stigma against single women and the danger specifically about single women and just any woman, whether single or not, walking alone down the middle of the street has changed substantially. The risk factor has changed substantially. I mean, think about, in some third world countries right now, women are still not allowed to leave the house without the company of a man. And the rationale behind that is because they are not safe walking down the street. and the man is there to protect them. Because if they were to walk down the street unattended, then they would be at substantial risk of, a variety of harmful activities. So, now if a woman walks down the street in New York City unattended, she's not facing those risks, right? And for Matt Walsh to be kind of making these arguments based on, like you said, these are ancient principles and they're kind of antiquated best practices here that, as you can see, and I hope I've explained thoroughly in this video, do not apply to contemporary society. So that's my, counter arguments to Matt Walsh on the topic of gender roles. If you like this video, make sure to like and subscribe to the Good Problems podcast on YouTube and Instagram. I'm David Nima, author of the book, Good Problems to Have, The Anatomy of Contemporary Happiness, and I will see you guys in the next video.